Welcome to Happy Hour, brought to you by Best Damn Bookkeeping. With these different businesses now, I mean, it sounds like now maybe you don't have free time because if you're working on a new thing, that's probably where most of the time gets sucked up. But how do you talked about scheduling your time and being able to plan for the lifestyle that you want to live. As you're getting into a new business, how do you make that happen? Because like I said earlier, I think for a lot of folks, it's accidental and you get there and you're like, oh shit, like this isn't exactly what I thought it would be. You have the benefit of some hindsight and some experience that you've done it a few times. But if somebody's just out there and just getting started, whether they're outdoorsy or whether they just love to collect buttons or whether they're really into figure skating or something else, maybe some skiing or snowboarding or whatever it is, whatever their hobbies are, any suggestions or ideas for protecting that sacred space for folks?
Man, I think it's important. No, I don't care what you do. I don't even care if you don't even take a hobby. If your hobby's working and you're like, I want to work 24/7, I still think it's important to be able to do these things, because what it is like, it's taking you away from, or stops you from being the bottleneck, which is like almost every entrepreneur's like biggest hurdle. Like so many entrepreneurs, there's this classic saying of like, don't work on the business, or don't work in the business, work on the business. And I think once you take yourself out of that, it's in the early days, it's very difficult. Like I've been there multiple times. You have to work in the business. Like you're the only dude. Like I can't afford to hire people. Like today, It's a little bit easier in my current company, like the one we're building, because like I could pretty much allocate most of everything, right? I can be the guy who's just kind of allocating resources. When in the early days, you can't do that. Like you can't even afford to pay someone to do your Instagram, right? Like you're just like you're in the trenches.
Yep.
And so I think the real question becomes like, yeah, everyone's like, yeah, that's great. I should work on my company, not in my company, but like who the hell is working in it? Because I don't have time, like someone's got to do it. And I think it's important, like he's taking any complex problem and breaking it down into like the small pieces. And so for me, because it's like, all right, let's get super granular. If I was saying like, I got to leave this September 1 and I'm going to be gone, even just say 2 weeks. Like I think, maybe a month is probably a lot for people who aren't there yet. And I don't even care if you don't go. I think it's really, really, well, I take it back. You should go. You should take 2 weeks, go on vacation. I don't care if like your thing is sitting on the beach, like figure out a way that you're like, okay, this date we're leaving. Okay, let's just start with the simple things. Like if I was going to be gone, and I think 2 weeks kind of the minimum, you can just kind of neglect for 2 weeks and essentially everything will just be there when you get back. But once you start getting past that, that's where it's like, oh, I have to like figure out a way. And so for me, the 4 weeks is a little bit better, to each their own. But like, let's just say like in a 2 week time period, if I'm going to be gone, what are going to be the problems? And then you sit there and you kind of break them down and you like write out a list. And it's like, man, this would have to happen. This would have to like this, I have to do this every week, okay. So maybe it's like payroll. Like, okay, so how do I take that? How do I take that off my plate and not become the bottleneck, right? And I get that there's some things that guys are like, well, I just can't afford that. So how do we increase that? Because we don't really have a business if you have to do everything in it. So a lot of this is like, okay, if I do need to we have to bring in an extra $10,000 a month in order to afford that. Like, okay, then how do we do that? It's like, I think it's easy to get stuck in these traps of, you're working, whatever your income is, and you kind of keep filling those roles, but you have to look at it as like, okay, this thing has to grow past me. We have to bring in enough income that I can outsource these things. Like me working for $10 an hour isn't a scalable thing. And so for me, it's like, it's all about scalability and then just choosing each problem and building one system at a time.
Hey, home service heroes. Thank you guys so much for tuning into our home service happy hour content today. I sure hope you learned a little something, and I sure as heck hope that it was entertaining. If you did find it fun and entertaining, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more cool, fun, entertaining business content. And speaking of which, stay tuned. There's a little more here and a little more right here. Check it out.